Today's proceedings with the correction of votes and proceedings of the 25th sitting held on Tuesday, March 8, 2022. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Yes, Honorable Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I was absent, but with permission. But I've been marked absent without permission. So if the correction can be made. Thank you.
Very well. Table office will verify your permission records and effect the correction. Yes, Honorable Deputy.
Mr. Speaker, same on page 7, item 2 and 5. The Honorable Adam Mohamed Amin Anta, Dr. Karga, and then Honorable Afenyo Markins. They are also absent with permission. I signed the permission forms, so I don't know why.
Very well. The same directive would apply to them. Page 8. Yes, Honorable Member for.
Honorable Speaker, yesterday I was absent with permission, but I've been marked absent, so I'll be grateful if item number 48 is deleted and placed under absent with permission. I'm grateful.
Very well. The table office will verify your records. Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Page 13. Page 14. Page 15. Honourable members, subject to the corrections effected, the votes and proceedings of Tuesday, March of 8th of March 2022 is hereby adopted as a true record. Honourable members, I have the official report of Tuesday, 15th February 2022. Any corrections? Yes,
Honorable Speaker, respectfully, I didn't see any official report in my opinion hall. I don't know if members did. When I went there this morning.
Sorry, can you take out the mask and speak into the mic? I didn't hear a word.
In that, respectfully, I went into my opinion hall. I didn't see the official report that you are referring to. So I don't know whether I just had this.
You mean you don't have a copy of the official report?
Yes.
Oh, very well. You will be given a copy. Yeah. Any corrections, please? In the absence of any corrections, the official report of Tuesday, 15 February 2022 is hereby adopted as a true record of proceedings. Peers and other members, I have been advised that the Attorney General has sought permission to come subsequently, so I'll move to item 6, questions. When the Attorney General comes, then we'll return to item 5, the urgent questions. So, yes, Leader.
Mr. Speaker, with your leave, same on questions. If we could start from question 826, that the Minister for responsible for youth and sports, he has been here since morning.
The Minister for Tourism is in the house. He has one question. So I wish that we'll finish with the Minister so that after that we'll leave the space for the Minister for Sports. Very well. So the Minister for Tourism may take the seat. Question number 805. In the name of the Honourable Member from Kranza North, Joseph Kwesi Mensah. You may ask your question now. Very well. The answer has been provided to the House. If the person is not available to ask the question, the answer would be published in the official report. Thank you, Honourable Minister, for attending upon the House. You have one more question? Yes. Question number 840. Yes, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member has asked me to ask the question.
Which one?
Well,
I'm now calling 840. When I call that and I call the name.
Okay. I know that's the only question left for the minister. That is why.
Very well. So question number 840.
Thank you.
The name of the honourable member for Pro East. Now I hear you.
Should I go and ask the question or to seek the permission? Your leave of.
Now listening to your permission.
Okay.
Seeking.
The honourable member has asked me to ask a question for him. So I want to seek your leave and that of the House to do so.
Yes, Honourable Deputy Whip.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think I have any objection to that. If he can ask on behalf of Dr. Kobna Donko 840, if actually he has asked you to do so.
Very well. So you may proceed to ask the question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask this question on behalf of Honourable Member for Pro East. To ask the Minister for Tourism, the plans the Ministry has to complete tourism, to promote tourism on the Volta Lake, especially Accra Town, the largest island on the Volta Lake. Thank you.
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Volta Lake is a great national asset. In the medium to long term, the Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture envisages a buoyant leisure tourism activities on the lake and its environs. So, Speaker, the Ministry has started a series of engagement with relevant stakeholders, including the Volta River Authority, VRA, and selected private sector organizations Mr. Speaker, in 2019, the ministry, through its agency, the Ghana Tourism Authority, partnered with a police company to launch the maiden Adom International River Festival in Akosombo to bridge the untapped opportunities of the Volta Lake. This event, Mr. Speaker, attracted hundreds of both domestic and international tourists, visitors. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, due to COVID-19 pandemic, subsequent editions in 2020 and 2021 could not be held. Mr. Speaker, we intend to revisit it this year. Mr. Speaker, other proposed infrastructure developments include waterfront resorts, boat cruises, kayaking, hiking, camping, which are mostly driven by the private sector investment. The idea, Mr. Speaker, is to develop the potential and package into our 2023 work plan for the Ghana Tourism Development Project. The relevant stakeholders, including the Judicial Assembly and traditional authorities, will also be engaged to ensure the harmonization of plans for Accra Town's sustainable development. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Do you have any follow-up questions, please?
Mr. Speaker, I find it difficult to locate the answer in the page 31. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to the Minister for the answer provided. I want to find out from the Minister if he can give 100% assurance to what he has written in the answer sheet. I want a double assurance of what he said.
You don't believe what you're reading, but if he says the same thing, you believe him. Yes, the Honourable Minister.
I don't want the one captured in the answer, the other paper. This is a supplementary question that I want assurance.
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I want to assure that this plan has been factored into our 2023 work plan and to be executed accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Any other follow-up question? No. Very well. Honourable Minister, we thank you for attending upon the House to answer questions. You are discharged. Now I'll go to question number 826. In the name of the Honourable Member for Esikuma, Mr. Alhassan Kobnagansa. Yes, you may ask your question.
Mr. Speaker, please, the Honourable Member for Esikuma Odobin has asked me to ask the question on his behalf.
Very well, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask the Minister for Youth and Sports how many astroturfs have been constructed in the central region, and when will same be constructed at Esikuma Odobin constituency? Thank you.
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, government policy is to provide for development, promotion and management of sports, and to ensure the establishment and management of public sporting facility in the country. I wish to inform you that currently 6 astroturfs have been constructed in the central region, and the breakdowns are as follows. Mr. Speaker, Mankesim School Park, the construction date is 2020. Location Mankesim Infantiman. Sponsor or the funding institution, the Coastal Development Authority. The project cost is 1.3 million and is currently 60% complete. Mr. Speaker, the next project or AstroTurf is in Victoria Park, Nyakrom, and it was awarded in September 2020. The district name is Swedro Aguna West District, and its Coastal Development Authority
and Honorable Cynthia Morrison. The project cost is 1.25 million and it is 80% complete. Mr. Speaker, the third project in Central Region is Otabi Chrome, and the project was PAC. The project was awarded in September 2020. The same town and the district, the same district, Aguna West District, and also the project funded is Coastal Development Authority. Project cost is 1.3 million and is completed. Mr. Speaker, the fourth project in Central Region is Yatel Okoso Park, and it was awarded in May 2018. Senya Breku Ewutu Senya, and the project is funded by Cheetah Football Club, and it's also 1.6 million. Phase 1 has been completed. Mr. Speaker, the fifth project in Central Region is Baujase Astrotef. Baujase Astrotef. And the project was awarded in January 2020, and it is at Baujase Ewutu Coastal Development Authority, and the project's cost is 1.3 million. And it's 90% complete. The fifth project is Enya Abasa, and it was awarded in October 2020. Abasa Ejumako Enya Esiem, and is sponsored by Ghana National Petroleum Corporation (GNPC), and the project cost is 1.1 million. And currently the project is 40% complete. Mr. Speaker, the ministry has initiated one constituency, one ASUTEF policy in order to ensure that every constituency in the country has been provided with modern pitches to develop potential of the youth, and a Sikuma Adobin Abrakwa constituency will certainly be considered. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to also ask the Minister for Youth and Sports, since he's mentioned that every constituency will have one. Currently, Central Region has 23 constituencies, and we already have heard from him that we have only 6 underway. When does the ministry intend to get Cape Coast North constituency one ASTROTEF? Thank you.
Honourable Member, don't take advantage of somebody's question to put your own issue across. Ask your own question. This is not your question, please.
Mr. Speaker, it's a follow-up question because of what the minister said regarding the fact that
it says every constituency in the country will get one.
So when are we getting our own?
Zooming in on Cape Coast North when the question was asked by Sikuma or Dobin Brakwa.
Because Cape Coast North is in the Central Region.
Yes, you will be covered. But in the meantime, you want a follow-up question on the Sikuma or Dobin Brakwa?
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. I'll proceed. Question number 827, in the name of the Honourable Member from Koko.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the Minister for Youth and Sports, when will the construction of the Nkoko Sports Stadium be completed?
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to reiterate government policy on sports infrastructure, the AstroTurf pitches are one of the alternative ways of providing standard football pitches in communities in Ghana. The ministry has initiated one constituency, one AstroTurf policy in order to ensure that every constituency in the country is provided with modern pitches, and in Nkoko constituency will certainly be considered. The ministry is seriously pursuing this agenda to promote decent sporting activities in the country, to unearth talent for international competition. Soft curtain for Nkoko Sports Stadium was done on Friday, 18th September 2020 by the former Minister for Youth and Sports, Honorable Isaac Esiama, and work commenced but has to be paused for architectural review on some section of the stadium, example the seating capacity, the athletic oval and dressing room, etc. Currently, the architectural review has been completed and it is expected that the contractor will move to site in the shortest possible time for work to continue. The facility will be 8,000-seater FIFA standard football pitch stadium with multi-purpose courts for more than 16 sporting disciplines, tennis courts, gymnasium, and International Athletic Federation World Athletic Standard, hostel facilities and restaurants. The estimated cost for the project is 27 million Ghana cedis. The project will be in two phases, with the first phase costing 14 million Ghana cedis and the second phase costing 30 million Ghana cedis. The project is funded with, from the Middle Belt Authority. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The sports complex to be constructed in two phases is expected to be completed within a 2-year period. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Honourable Member, yes, if you have any follow-up question, please do so.
I don't have a follow-up question.
You're done. Thank you. Question number 828, also in the name of the Honourable Member for Nkoko. You may ask your next question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the Minister for Youth and Sports, when would Nkoko constituency benefit from the construction, the government's intervention of providing AstroTurf for communities?
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. For the record, I've just answered a question related to the Honourable Member's constituency, and I've indicated the government policy on sports infrastructure. The AstroTurf pitches are one of the alternative ways of providing standard football pitches in selected communities in Ghana, and the Ministry has initiated one constituency, one AstroTurf policy in order to ensure that every constituency in the country will be provided with modern pitches, and Nkoko constituency will certainly be considered. The Ministry is seriously working on it to ensure that the project that we have started will be completed, and government will certainly provide Nkoko communities with AstroTurf as soon as budgetary provisions are made to the ministries by the Ministry of Finance. Thank you.
Very well. Do you still have a follow-up question on this one?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm okay with it.
Very well. Question number 841. In the name of the Honourable Member for Ilo Krobo, Albert Tete Nyakote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask the Minister for Youth and Sports when the Ilo Krobo constituency will benefit from the government's intervention of providing AstroTurfs for all constituencies.
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Ilo Krobo constituency will surely benefit from a government-intended plan to have AstroTurf in every constituency and every district in Ghana. And as and when the ministry receives funding from the Ministry of Finance, the Ilo Krobo constituency will be considered. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I have a follow-up question. The government's policy on AstroTurf is one AstroTurf per constituency. In the order paper of 8th December 2021, the the report on the number of AstroTurfs constructed indicates that some constituencies have 3 AstroTurfs, some have 2. We are enjoined by the Constitution, by the Constitution Article 35(3), that the state shall promote just and reasonable access by all citizens to public. And I don't think we have a single one, even in the Kobo area, not even a single one. There are 4 constituencies. Can you tell us exactly when we are getting one in Yellow Kobo? Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. It is important for me to state that various stakeholders provide AstroTurfs aside the government policy. So we have other non-causal government agencies and NGOs also providing AstroTurfs for communities in this country. So on the government side, once the policy is to ensure that every constituency in Ghana and every district in Ghana is allocated one, and it is being done in phases. So definitely, you should take it from me. I'm giving you assurance that every constituency will get an AstroTurf as long as the funding arrangement is made. Thank you. Yes.
My final question, Mr. Speaker. In the 8th December report, it was clearly indicated that the Middle Belt Development Authority, the Zongo Development Fund, the Ghana National Gas Company, the Coastal Development Authority, and the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation are collaborating under the ministry to provide these facilities. For me, there's no reason why, if this collaboration is effective, for some of these, maybe 2 or 3 of these organizations, to put up AstroTurfs in one constituency, when in several constituencies, my constituency and the constituencies around my place, there's no single one. Please do all you can. This is an appeal to you to ensure that we get our fair share of the national cake, if there's one. Thank you very much.
It's an advice to you, unless you wish to respond to it. Very well. Question number 8. Yes, this was a question relating to Yellow Krobo. Your follow-up must be to Yellow Krobo.
Because of the answer given by the minister, it will be appropriate. Just for some clarification.
All the questions of AstroTurf, he adds that part. But the government of the question is Yellow Krobo. So if your follow-up is not a Yellow Krobo,
yes,
please ask your own question.
I appreciate your guidance. I was just wondering whether it was in the budget, since the minister is making that promises. I went through the budget. I didn't see any one constituency, one AstroTurf. So if the minister is now making that statement for me, it's
out of order. Yes. Question number 842. In the name of the honorable member for New Edubiase, Adams Abdul Salam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask the Minister for Youth and Sports, when work on the construction of the new Edubiase Sports Stadium will commence and the expected time of completion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Minister.
They will even capture.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the contractor for the project is Shakden Company Limited, and the present government will ensure that the construction and the recommence in December 2020, and at present the floor works of the foundation has been completed. The government of Ghana is funding this project, and it is estimated to cost this country 11 million Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, 2 million Ghana cedis out of the amount has been released to the contractor for the project, with further release assurance from the Honorable Minister for Finance. The government has made budgetary provision, and in the 2022 budget, a provision was made to ensure that this project is completed for the use of the good people of New Edubiase. The contractor has therefore been directed
to move to site. We have given the contractor up to the end of this month to go back to site to ensure that we get this project completed. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the minister just said that he has directed the contractor to go back to site. I wanted to find out from the minister, which of the sites have you directed the contractor to go back to? Is it the one that was started in 2016 and has seen fencing almost complete, washrooms at roofing level, dressing room at roofing level, or the one that was started in 2020 prior to the election that has only seen...
On which one did you ask the question?
Mr. Speaker, I asked the question about the sports stadium. As we speak now, there are two sites, and I don't know which one
Which one did you ask the question on? Since you said there are two
Mr.
sites.
Speaker, that's the confusion in the constituency. So I wanted the minister to clarify. Which one is he going to? Because it's the same contractor, and I'm not sure if there was a signing of the facility and the contract was re-awarded for a separate facility or so. Because the one that was started in 2016 is about 54% complete. So which one is the contractor asked to go back to?
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Is the one that was re-awarded in 2020, and I stated here that in 2020 the contractor was asked to recommence in the new site. So the direction that has been given to the contractor, what is on my table, is the current contract, which is 11 million Ghana cedis. And the previous one you are talking about, I don't know anything about it. What I know is the current one. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if it's the current one, the minister says that about 2 million cedis had been released to the contractor and foundation work has been done. I don't know if site clearing constitutes a foundation of a project. They've only cleared the site. And if that costs 2 million cedis, that leaves a lot of questions to be asked.
What was your question?
My question is that, Mr. Speaker, have they done any foundation? Has the minister taken the pains to find out the percentage of work that has been done at the new site as we speak? Do you know what percentage of work has been completed?
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my answer is very clear. I said the floor works of the foundation has been completed, and 2 million Ghana cedis has been issued to the contractor based on the certificates raised through the consultant for the project. And so, to answer your question, yes, the foundation works, and also the clearing of site and everything, include the foundation, is to give room for the construction to take place. These are all part of the project. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to find out from the minister if the contractor has any outstanding payment certificate.
Yes, Honorable.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. The contractor has any outstanding certificate with the government, and that is why we have directed him, we have given him timelines to go back on site to continue the project so that they can raise more certificates for him. Government is committed to ensure that this project is completed for the good use of the good people of New Edubiase constituency. Thank you.
You're done. You're entitled to 3.
This one, Mr. Speaker,
You're entitled to 3. You have asked all of them. Yes. I'll proceed to question number 927. Also in the name of the honorable member for Esikuma Odobin Brakwa. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It appears the question is the same as the one I previously asked.
Okay, very well. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Then. Question number 928. In the name of the honorable member for Upper Menya Krobo, Bismarck Tetenyaku. Yes.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Speaker, I want to ask the minister when Upper Manya Krobo constituency will have its share of the astroturfs being constructed across the country. Thank you, Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to reiterate government policy on sporting infrastructure, the AstroTurf pitches are one of the alternative ways of providing standard football pitches in selected communities in Ghana. And like I said, the Ministry of Youth and Sports has initiated one constituency, one AstroTurf policy in order to ensure that every constituency in Ghana is provided with a modern pitches, and the Upper Menya Krobo constituency will certainly be considered. The ministry is seriously pursuing this agenda to promote decent sporting activities in the country, to unearth talent for international competition, and government will certainly provide Upper Menya Krobo communities with AstroTurf as soon as budgetary provisions are made to the ministry by the Ministry of Finance. Thank you so much.
Yes, any follow-up question, please?
Thank you, Speaker. I have follow-up questions. Speaker, the last paragraph of the minister's response, minister is certain government will provide astroturfs for Upper Manya. Speaker, we will need about 4 of them. I want to find out from the minister whether what is the maximum they can provide for one constituency.
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I've indicated that government policy is to ensure that every constituency gets one. Every constituency gets at least one AstroTurf. So that's the government policy. Thank you.
Speaker, same in the last paragraph of minister's response. Speaker, reference to previous reports produced by the minister on AstroTurf that have been constructed, about 4 of them have been done in Eastern region, and all these 4 have been sponsored by the Middle Belt Authority. Minister indicates here that the Ministry of Youth and Sports is going to sponsor that of Upper Manya when Ministry of Finance budgets for the ministry. Speaker, I want to find out whether is it a case that the Middle Belt Authority is not interested in Upper Manya, or this is a special treatment you want to give us so that the ministry will take care of ours?
Honorable, to the best of my knowledge, the authorities did not select them themselves. Either the DCE or the MPs suggested what they should use their allocation for. Some people use theirs for public toilets, others use theirs for classrooms, and others choose AstroTurf parks. So you work with your DC or MCE to decide how you use your allocation as the authority. They don't usually choose it for us, to the best of my knowledge. If you have another follow-up question, you're entitled to ask.
Speaker, I asked for the source of funding, whether the Ministry or the Middle Development Authority, and it appears your response or intervention has not answered or addressed my question, please.
Your question was in relation to whether the authority is not interested in Menya or the Yellow Krobo. And I wanted to advise that should not come here. The decision as to how to use the money allocated to the authorities is made by the Assembly and the MCs. That is different from the question you want to ask. If you want to ask another question, please proceed.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is this. I know from other constructions that you did that it was funded by the Middle Belt Authority. Your response here shows that your ministry will consider Upper Manya when Ministry of Finance make budget allocations for you. So I want to find out whether this Upper Manya indeed is going to be taken care of by the Ministry for Youth and Sports, or is it still going to be under Middle Belt Authority? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. What the Ministry of Youth and Sports have mandate to do is whatever we receive from the Ministry of Finance. So what I can assure you and the good people of Upper Manya Provo is when the Ministry of Finance release funding to the ministry on the AstroTurf, you will be considered. But you also have opportunity, like the Speaker said, there is allocation given to the authorities, and your district assembly sits for meetings. So once you have your plan, and it is captured in the district plan, that they should use portion of what is allocated to your authority for an AstroTurf, the ministry is ready to support you to get it done as well. So that is what I can assure you. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to ask a question. In your response, Minister, you said the program is one district or constituency.
He said the policy.
The policy, right,
yes,
is one district, one AstroTurf, which is a program that the Ministry of Sports is actually embarking upon. Any clarity as to how any member of parliament, for example, myself, who also wants some in my constituency, will follow up and be able to access this kind of facility? Any clarity, direction as to how we are able to get to these ones, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's a government policy to ensure that every constituency or every district, and we know the district in Ghana, and we are doing so as and when we get funding or budgetary allocation from the Ministry of Finance. So be rest assured that every constituency will be considered. But if the honourable member wants, you can write to the ministries, and the ministries will put it on our file as and when we get funding. Your constituency will be considered. Thank you.
Question number, very well, Honourable Minister. No, question number 928. That's what has been asked, Upper Manya Krobo, right? Very well. So that brings us to the end of questions directed at the Minister for Youth and Sports. Honourable Minister, we thank you for attending upon the House to answer questions. You are discharged. The next set of questions are directed at the Minister for Employment and Labour Relations. Thank you, Honourable Minister. Now, may I call on the Honourable Member for Fantiakwa South, Mr. Kofi Ochirajikum, to ask this question. Question number 504.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask the Minister of Employment and Labour Relations the number of workers engaged by government yearly from January 2012 to December 2020 and the corresponding increases in wage bills. Thank you.
Yes, Honourable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I answer the question, I want to effect a small change in the write-up. Under paragraph 2, the item number 2, just after Mr. Speaker, should read, due to a change
in the software of payment, Controller and Accountant General's Department could not provide data prior to 2015. That's how it should read. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, government employs about 7% of the working population, according to Ghana Living Standard Survey 7. This is done through respective public services and youth employment, the civil service, health, education, police, immigration services, and the Ghana Armed Forces have recruited several thousands of workers over the period in question. Mr. Speaker, due to a change in the software of payment, Controller and Accountant General's Department could not provide data prior to 2015. Data from the Controller and Accountant General's Department indicates that from 2015 to 2020, government employed a total of 265,790 people. Over the same period, 586,584,290 Ghana cedis, 99 pesos was spent on the compensation of these workers. The breakdown of the data provided is as follows. 2015 number employed 25,262. 2016 10,593. 2017 44,366. 2018 72,225. 2019 51,021. 2020 62,329, totaling 265,790. The total sums of monies spent on them altogether adds up to 586,584,290 cedis, 99 pesos. Mr. Speaker, it is worth noting that government, through a number of mass employment initiatives, such as the Nation Builders Corps, Youth in Afforestation, and the youth employment programs, equally recorded a number of persons who worked within the public spaces, but whose statistics are not included in the data above. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I noticed that the employment figures for 2015 was 25,262, and in 2016 it dropped to 10,593. Almost 15,000 drop. Can the minister tell us what caused this drop?
Yes.
I cannot specifically tell what led to that, but this same period coincided in the period that we were under the IMF program. There was a net freeze on employment except for areas of health and education. So I don't know whether really that was the cause, but this is what I can say on that.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate that he was probably not in charge at that time. But I can see that between 2016 and 2017, there was a huge increase in employment from 10,593 to 44. I'm sure you can tell us what caused that one, because you were in charge. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, in 2017, there were a backlog of nurses that had not been recruited into the public space for a long time
and most of these backlogs were cleared in 2017. And we finally exited the IMF program in 2018. So that also gave an opportunity to government to engage within the public space. So I want to believe that that is the main reason why the employment figures went up going beyond 2017.
Your last question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In paragraph 5 of your answer, you stated it is worth noting that government, through a number of mass employment initiatives such as National Builders Corps, Youth in Afforestation, and Youth Employment Program, equal recorded a number of persons who have worked within the public space. It's a pity you did not give us the figures, but can you, on top of your head, give us an idea of the number of employments in these areas? Thank you.
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it was deliberate not adding them to the figures because those ones are referred to as transitional jobs. They are not full-time jobs. But I understood the question to mean those who are on government payroll and what have you. But I do know the average between the period. The Youth Employment Program, for instance, has always had not less than 100,000 people on their payroll. NABCO also had a little over 100,000, and then the Youth in Afforestation has between 45 and 50,000 persons. Thank you.
Very well. The next question is in the name of the Honourable Member for Sujaman. Mr. Thomas Nyakwampim, question 721.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask the Minister for Employment and Labour Relations what accounted for the near stampede during the Youth Employment Agency job fair, and what is the statistics of youth employed through the fair? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Employment and Labour Relations, together with its agencies and partners, have organized several job fairs to educate the youth and job seekers on employment issues and also to provide linkages between organizations and job seekers. For instance, together with the Ghanaian German Center for Jobs, Migration and Reintegration, the ministry has organized 6 job fairs between 2017 and 2021 that resulted in more than 4,400 young men and women being placed in employment. These events were held without a hitch. However, the Youth Employment Agency's job fair held on the 9th and 10th of September 2021 at the Accra International Conference Center experienced a near stampede situation. This was as a result of the participants not adhering to the crowd management measures instituted at the fair. Learning from the experience, the agency has re-strategized to curtail similar occurrences during subsequent job fairs. With respect to the statistics, a total number of 226 youth have so far gained employment through the job fair in the Greater Accra region. The details are as follows. Mr. Speaker, the list is quite tall, and I will plead with the Hazards Department to capture it as having been read. Thank you.
Yes, Honourable Member, you may ask a follow-up question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Minister has given us in paragraph 3 that a total of 226 youth have gained employment through the job fair in the Greater Accra region? Was it limited to jobs only in the Greater Accra region? What of those in the other regions?
Yes, Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the question was specific to a particular job fair which was organized here in Accra, and it was done for Greater Accra. Usually some of these job fairs are replicated in the regions as well. So this was the outcome of job fair. If they should move to any other region, we'll also give you figures as to what will be the results of that.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, do they have any intention to replicate this job fair for the other 15 regions?
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I want to assure my colleague that it is not just the Youth Employment Agency that is organizing job fairs so far as our sector is concerned. So we'll use every means available to us to make sure that all our agencies that are responsible for organizing job fairs do not concentrate on only one part of the country, but spread out evenly so that persons who are looking for jobs across the length and breadth of this country will have an opportunity to attend some of these job fairs.
Your last one.
Finally, Mr. Speaker, I would be interested if the Minister could furnish us with the details, names specifically, of those beneficiaries that he has listed gain employment through this particular job fair. Not here, but I mean, can the Minister provide that information? Thank you.
If you ask him a specific question, he will try to. Or, Honorable Minister, yes.
Mr. Speaker, I thought I've been a bit detailed in my answer, given specifically institutions that recruited the numbers. So anybody that wants to do due diligence can just pick up this and follow up at the institutional level to find out whether indeed the job fair. So I think this should be enough to give anybody the comfort that he desires.
Very well. This is the last of the set of questions intended for the Minister for Employment. Which other one? Oh, follow-up question? Oh, 721 and 722. Right. I actually marked 722 and 722 at the same time somehow. Very well. You may ask 722, please.
Grateful, Mr. Speaker, once again. And I rise again to ask the Minister for Employment and Labour Relations, what is the current rate of unemployment in Ghana, and how many direct jobs has the government created since 2017 to date? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in answering the question, I want this correction to be effected. Paragraph 9, just after 2019, form the GSS should be cancelled. Form the GSS should be cancelled. Mr. Speaker, I proceed to give my answer. Mr. Speaker, the issue of unemployment is a major policy concern that has dominated national discourse since time immemorial. In 2021, the Ministry of Employment and Labour Relations undertook a trend analysis of the unemployment situation in the country over the past 29 years, i.e. 1991 to 2020. Data for the analysis was sourced from the International Labour Organization's ILO Stats, a global reference for international labour statistics. ILO Stats cross-references data from labour surveys, census, and other national data from the Ghana Statistical Service for its analysis. Mr. Speaker, it is important we recognize and acknowledge the dynamics of our labour market systems, as well the data and reporting challenges of national institutions such as the Labour Department and the Ghana Statistical Service. As a result, statistics on the unemployment situation in Ghana are not published on a regular basis by these institutions. They are published periodically based on surveys and population census, such as the one Ghana Statistical Service concluded recently. Based on the metadata of the Ghana Living Standard Survey, round 7 of the GSS, about 1,027,594 persons aged 15 years and older were estimated to be unemployed as at 2019. The GLSS-7 thus estimated national unemployment rate to be 8.4 in 2019. The 2021 population census labor force, which is the economically active population of 15 years and older, at 11,541,355. Out of that figure, 9,990,237 were employed and 1,551,118 unemployed. This puts the unemployment rate at 13.44%. Mr. Speaker, the above figures are at variance with the figures obtained from the ILO stats on Ghana for the same period. According to the ILO stats report, the unemployment figure of Ghana for 2019 was 4.12% and 4.53% for 2020. The variations of the GSS figures and that of the ILO stem from different definitions which are used in their computations. ILO standard definition of unemployed persons is all those who have attained employable age and are available for jobs and are looking for jobs but not getting. i.e., this excludes all those who have reached the employable age, not working, yet are not looking for jobs within the reference period. The Ghana Statistical Service, however, uses the ILO relaxed definition of unemployment, which includes all persons that have reached the employable age and are available for jobs, whether looking for jobs or not. For instance, in metadata for 2019, from the 2019 GLSS, per the ILO's definition, the unemployment rate stood at 4.12. But using the relaxed definition, an additional 4.3 was added to bring it to the current rate of 8.4. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Employment and Labour Relations is conducting an analysis of jobs created by government as at December 2021. It is expected that the exercise will be completed by the end of first quarter 2022. This Honourable House will be furnished with the final report upon completion of the exercise. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Minister in his response has given us two definitions of unemployment from two different sources. For planning purposes, which of these are you relying on for your work?
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. It depends on what the purpose of the report will be for. For instance, if I'm reporting and the purpose of the report is to do international comparison, then I should use a basis which is common to every country, in that case, I will go by the ILO's strict definition. But for our own internal consumption, I will use the relaxed definition, which includes everybody, whether you are looking for a job or not.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, the latter part of his response suggests that he cannot provide data per my answer, per my question, because you are now in the process of collating jobs that have been created. But looking at these statistics, would you agree with me that the unemployment situation in this country is worsening by the year?
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Certainly not, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, statistical figures ought to be interpreted, putting it in the right context. For instance, if you are comparing two data, you have to look at the conditions which existed at a particular time when the data was captured. Let me just illustrate this. If, for instance, a survey is conducted within the dry seasons, and then the questioner went to any of the three northern regions, it is possible that many active persons who work on farms will be captured as not working, because usually they will give you a reference period. They will ask you, within the past 5 days, have you worked to earn a living? The answer certainly will be that no, because the person is a farmer, they are in the thick of the dry season, there's no farming activity, so certainly at that time the person is not working. But if that same question was put to the person within the farming season, the answer will be different, because that person will have been engaged within the reference period in active working life. So that is one. Number two, you all know that the world is coming out of COVID. We have done studies which indicated that COVID actually impacted negatively on work generally. So if you did a survey immediately after COVID, certainly the impact on work will show. It does not really mean that that is the trend. Indeed, if you want to establish whether or not the situation is worsening, then you will have to do a trend analysis, but not just a one-time survey to be able to inform yourself of what the situation is.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister's response on page 37, paragraph 5, states that based on the metadata of the Ghana Living Standards Survey round 7 of the GSS, about 1,027,594 persons aged 15 years and older were estimated to be unemployed as of 2019. And that represented 8.4%. Now, on the next paragraph, the 2021 population census puts the labor force, which is the economically active population, the same age bracket, 15 years and older, at 11,541,355. Out of that figure, 9.9 million were employed and 1.5 million were unemployed. That represents a rate of 13.44. So from a rate of 8.4 to 13.44. That is the Ghana Statistical Service figures. The ILO also indicates 4.12% in 2019 and 4.53% in 2020. Are you contesting these figures in any way?
Yes, Honourable Minister.
I am certainly not contesting these figures. I gave you those figures, so I should have faith in those figures. Except that I'm telling you that you don't just take figures at the face of it. You have to be able to put it in a context, to be able to understand it very well. For instance, there's a sharp difference between Ghana Living Standards Survey and census. For every census, there's a reference period. 1 week, the census night, is the reference period. But for Ghana Living Standard Survey, it is not done with a specific timeline. It depends on when the interviewer will doorstep. So it is possible in Greater Accra, it will be done in, say, June. But going to my region, Bono, it will be done in, say, September. And the situations may differ. That is why I answered the question earlier by saying that in interpreting figures on employment, you will have to be able to put them in a context before you can do comparison. Otherwise, the interpretation may not be right. I also indicated to you that COVID had effect on employment, and I'll be the last person to say that COVID did not affect work. It did, and quite a number of persons lost their jobs. Potential job seekers could not also get jobs because of COVID. But that does not mean that the door is closed. We will need to do a trend analysis to be able to establish whether or not indeed the situation is worsening before we can make a conclusion.
Yes, Mr. Adams.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Speaker, I want to find out from the Minister. Census has a reference point that all questions get related to. So in the case of census done by Ghana Statistical Services, it doesn't relate to you do at this area this month and you have to go and do another area in another month. Therefore, their data is very, very credible and very reliable because of shifting of jobs, even if there is any. That data is suggesting 0.4% of youthful age that should be employed is unemployed, and therefore the unemployment situation is worsening. The Minister, are you agreeing or disagreeing with this report from Ghana Statistical Service, which has a reference point for their survey? Thank you.
Yes.
Kofi, oh, sorry, Honorable. Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry for identifying my honorable colleague as Kofi, but he's a friend, so I am not contesting it, but I'm just giving the general advice as to how we should interpret the figures. You see, when you are doing something with a reference point, it's just like taking a snapshot as of that time. So, for instance, immediately after bed, if I should take a snap of you, it will not certainly be the same after you have taken a meal. The of you after a meal will perhaps show a protruded stomach, unlike the other one. So that explains the point I'm trying to make, that yes, it depends on when that snapshot was taken. If indeed it was taken, especially in my area, for instance, the major activity there is farming. So if the snapshot on employment was taken within farming period, you will notice that virtually every young person who will be engaged. But then if that same snapshot was taken off farming season, most of the youth will be reported as not working because they will not be active then. So it's just a question I'm giving for our own interpretation. It is not about doubting the figures provided by Ghana Statistical Service. Thank you.
Now you're here. You did not appear to ask your own question. No. Very well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the answers the Minister has given, will the Minister consider having a Ghanaian definition and a Ghanaian matrix for unemployment?
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my respected colleague has been joining me for International Labour Conference, and he knows how we report there. There's nothing like a Ghanaian contest when we get there. It is purely international. But I agree with him on the issue of us
picking that which suits our condition. And that's why what I answered earlier when he was not here, I indicated that for planning purposes, I would prefer us using the relaxed definition, which includes everybody. Because if we sound too technical by going by the ILO strict definition, we will only be laughing at only one side of our mouth. Because indeed, whether the person is looking for work or not, if the person is not working, he is not working. And therefore, for policy purposes, if we are planning, we will need to take all such persons into consideration. It is for that reason why since 2010, Ghana has deviated from using the strict definition of ILO into the relaxed definition of ILO, which takes our local situation into consideration.
Very well. Thank you for attending upon the House to answer the questions. You're discharged, Honorable. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I think the Attorney General is in now, and if he can now respond to the agent question on page 3.
Very well. We'll return to the item 5 then. Agent question, Honorable Attorney General. Yes. The urgent question is in the name of the honorable member for Buem. Kofi Adams, you may ask the questions now.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity. I rise to ask the Attorney General and Minister for Justice the status of the draft constitutional instrument for the creation of a constituency for Central Kofi, Akpafu, Lolobi, and Likwe traditional area. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity. Speaker, my answer to the question will entail an address of the background to the situation that we find ourselves in. And I think that will better assist the court assist the House, in appreciating the circumstances surrounding the enactment of the constitutional instrument. As we can proceed. Until the enactment of the Representation of the People Parliamentary Constituencies Instrument 2020, CI 128, for electoral purposes, Central Kofi, Akpafu, Likwe, and Lolobi, described as SAR for short, were part of the whole constituency. Administratively, these areas were also in the Volta region. On 15 February 2019, by Constitutional Instrument number 112, the boundaries of the Volta region were altered after due recourse to mandatory procedures stipulated in Article 5 of the Constitution, resulting in the creation of the Oti region. The traditional areas of Central Kofi, Akpafu, Likwe, and Lolobi ceased to be part of the Volta region as we included the territories considered by law into the Oti region. The formation of the new Oti region had the further consequence that even though administratively Ohoe district remained in the Volta region, part of the Ohoe constituency, specifically the SAL areas, had become a part of the Oti region by dint of CI 112. In point of fact, the SAL areas were placed under the Jasikan district in the Oti region. A clear constitutional violation was imminent. Mr. Speaker, it is because Article 47, Clause 2 of the Constitution provides that, and I quote, no constituency shall fall within more than one region, end of quote. This situation necessitated the enactment of a new constitutional instrument to alter the boundaries of Ohoe constituency, as the continued placement of SAR within the Ohoe constituency was going to be a flagrant violation of Article 47, Clause 2. The Supreme Court on 24 June 2020, in suit number J6/01/2020, entitled Valentine Edem Jase versus Henry Ametefe, the chairman of Ohoe constituency of the NDC, the secretary of Ohoe constituency, NDC, Professor Margaret Kweku, the Regional Electoral Officer Ho, as well as the Municipal Electoral Officer Ho, underscored the necessity for the SAR areas to cease to be a part of the Ho constituency in the Volta region, and for a new constituency to be created for them. The court stated, and I quote a very small part of the judgment, that what this means is that whenever regional boundaries are changed in a manner that affects existing constituencies, the constituency boundaries have to be amended to align with the new regional boundaries. For the reasons explained above, we hold that as things stand now, CI 95 is inconsistent with Article 47+2 of the Constitution, to the extent that the traditional areas of Central Kofi, Akpafu, Likpe, and Olobi, which fall within the Oti region, are stated to be part of the Hohoi constituency, which is in the Volta region. And to the extent of that inconsistency, CI 95 is unconstitutional. End of quote. With the benefit of this clear decision of the Supreme Court, the Electoral Commission set out to align or realign the boundaries of the Hohoi constituency and to place the SAR areas within the constituency in the Oti region. Mr. Speaker, a new constitutional instrument, CI 128, was enacted. This CI placed the SAR areas within the Buem constituency, which is the Honorable Member's constituency, with its headquarters being Jasikan in the Oti region. This situation should not have created any problem at all and should have ensured a due exercise by the people of SAR of their right to participate in the parliamentary election in the Buem constituency in the December 2020 elections. Mr. Speaker, the genesis of the problem was in November 2020, when this Honorable House allowed the Local Government Guan District Assembly Establishment Instrument 2020, LI 2416, for the creation of the Guan District, which had been laid before Parliament on Tuesday, 6 October 2020, to come into effect. On Monday, 9 November 2020, less than a month before the December 2020 elections, LI 2416 came into force after having satisfied the constitutional prerequisite for 21 sitting days. It is pertinent to note that the areas carved into the Guan district by LI 2416 were hitherto part of the Jasikan district. Consequent on the enactment of LI 2416, the 4 traditional areas of SAR were placed under the new Guan district and ceased to be part of the Jasikan district. This development essentially required the Electoral Commission to create a new constituency once again for the SAR areas called the Guan constituency, as the Commission took the view that to allow for them to remain within the Guam constituency would unleash another constitutional anomaly of having the Member of Parliament for Guam being a member of both the Jasikan and Guam district assemblies at the same time. The Speaker, a constituency necessarily must fall within the area of authority of a district assembly, and a Member of Parliament is required to be a member of one district assembly and no more. Indeed, that is the construction placed on Article 242, Paragraph B of the Constitution. Effort by the Electoral Commission to address the anomaly. The Electoral Commission, in its quest to ensure a due exercise of the franchise by the people of SAR, proceeded to take steps to create a constituency for the areas forming part of the newly created Guan district by amending the Representation of the People Parliamentary Constituencies Regulations 2020 CI 128, as well as the district electoral areas designation of units Regulations 2019 CI 119. Copies of the draft constitutional instruments were submitted to the Office of Attorney General by correspondence dated 13 November 2020. Subsequently, the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Justice, by a letter dated 18 November 2020, forwarded the draft Representation of the People Parliamentary Constituencies Amendment Instrument 2020 and comments thereon to the Electoral Commission for their consideration. The Attorney General particularly drew the attention of the Electoral Commission to the limited time frame for the dissolution of the next, having regard to Clause 7 of Article 11 of the Constitution, which requires 21 sitting days for the draft instrument to come into force after being so late in Parliament. On 26 November 2020, by a letter dated 23 November 2020, the Electoral Commission requested the Attorney General to finalize the draft constitutional instrument. Further to the receipt of the correspondence, the Office of the Attorney General finalized work on the draft constitutional instrument and forwarded same to the Electoral Commission under cover of correspondence dated 30 November 2020. The Office further advised the Electoral Commission to, in line with parliamentary procedure, engage a parliamentary committee on subsidiary legislation to consider the draft instrument before the instrument is laid in Parliament. Indeed, as the Office of the Attorney General apprehended and had cautioned in its letter of 8 November 2020, processes leading to its creation, that the creation of the Guan constituency, could not materialize since Parliament went on recess for the December 2020 elections on 9 November 2020, the same day that the LI creating the Guan district came into force, implying that the constitutional instrument for the creation of the Guan constituency could not be laid before Parliament. The record shows that Parliament resumed only on Monday, 14 December 2020, a week after the 2020 elections. In order to prevent a palpable constitutional crisis to be occasioned if the residents of Guan district, i.e. the SAR areas, voted for a member of Parliament for the Boem constituency, which is part of the Jaskan district, on the eve of the 7th December general elections, the Electoral Commission directed the residents of the Guan district to the presidential and not the parliamentary election. When Parliament resumed sitting on 14 December 2020, the Electoral Commission could not lay the amendments to CI 128 for want of the mandatory 21 sitting days, for same to come into force before the dissolution of the 7th Parliament on the midnight of Wednesday, 6 January 2021. The Electoral Commission, therefore was compelled to wait for the 8th Parliament to be sworn in on 7 January 2021 before the CI to amend CI 128 could be laid before Parliament. In 2021, the Electoral Commission started the processes for the creation of a new Guan constituency. The Commission held a consultative meeting with stakeholders in the new Guan district for proposed name and headquarters of the new constituency. The stakeholders unanimously agreed on a constituency name, Guan constituency, with the headquarters being Lipe Mate. A constitutional instrument to amend CI 128 has been drafted and submitted to the Office of the Attorney General for review. The reviewed constitutional instrument will be laid before Parliament in accordance with Clause 7 of Article 11 before same comes into force. Mr. Speaker, the way forward. Presently, even if the constitutional instrument is laid before Parliament and same comes into force in accordance with Clause 7 of Article 11, the reality is that the creation of a new Guan constituency consisting of the SAR areas shall only come into effect upon the next dissolution of Parliament, i.e. 6 January 2025. This is the effect of Article 47, Clause 6 of the Constitution. Alternatively, if it is desired that the creation comes into force, the way to achieve representation of the SAR people in Parliament, in this term of Parliament, is to do two things. The first is to revoke LI 2416, establishing the Guan district, which would imply that the residents of SAR will remain under the Boem district. The second step is to annul the 2020 parliamentary election organized for the Boem constituency, to allow residents of the 4 SAR communities qualified to vote under Article 42 of the Constitution to exercise their rights to elect a member of Parliament to represent them, since CI 128, used for the conduct of the 2020 parliamentary elections, is the SAR areas under Boem constituency. A placement of the SAR areas under the Boem district and an annulment of the Boem parliamentary election in order to allow the residents of SAR to vote for a member of Parliament in the Boem constituency would eliminate the risk of a violation of Article 242, paragraph B. It is observed that there is currently pending in the High Court, Hohoi, a suit challenging the validity of the election of Mr. Kofi Adams as member of Parliament for the Boem constituency on account of a denial of the right to vote of the SAR people in the December 2020 Boem parliamentary election. The suit is numbered CP-CRP/E/1/2021 and entitled in the matter of parliamentary election for the Boem constituency and the matter of a petition by Stephen Bempong and 12 others versus Mr. Kofi Adams and the Electoral Commission. The Speaker, the reliefs being sought in that action include an order of the court cancelling the parliamentary election in the Boem constituency and further orders directed the Electoral Commission to organize fresh elections in the Boem constituency, inclusive of the 13 electoral areas in the traditional areas of Santo Kofi, Akpafu, Lolobi, and Lipe. An adjudication of that suit will be instructive in the determination of whether the people of SAR should be allowed to vote for a member of Parliament in the Boem constituency or not. Mr. Speaker, this is the respectful answer to the question.
Yes, Honorable Member for Boem.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I want to ask the Minister for Justice and Attorney General what advice the ministry gave to the Electoral Commission in relation to the creation of the district, the approval same by this House, and i.e. the Constitution and the 2020 general elections.
Yes, Honorable Minister. Speaker, especially the advice given by the Office of Attorney General, as I have indicated already, the Office advised the Electoral Commission that having regard to a limited time frame for the passage of CI, the proposed CI to amend CI 128, it was not advisable for the constitutional instrument to be laid before Parliament. And indeed, the apprehension of the Attorney General, as I indicated, came to pass because Parliament rose on 9th November 2020 and resumed sitting on 14th December 2020 after the election. So, having regard to the time frame from 9th November 2020 to 7th December 2020, it was definitely impossible for an achievement of the 21 sitting days before the CI to amend CI 128 would have come into force. So, Mr. Speaker, that is the answer that we give.
Mr. Speaker, I asked because of his second opinion as to what could happen, the cancellation of the LI that established the district, and therefore a reversal to an election of the whole. So if the district doesn't exist. But I want to find out from the Minister for Justice and Attorney General whether the further delay in concluding the draft CI for the creation of a constituency for the Guam district, which he himself admitted in his answer that some work has happened. The 4 traditional areas have agreed to the name of the constituency. They have agreed to the capital of the constituency. The further delay in bringing the CI to this House is not creating more problems for all of us, including the Minister responsible for Justice and Attorney General.
Yes, Honorable Minister. Mr. Speaker, indeed, no delay has been occasioned, and I do not think that a delay in laying the CI before this Honorable House will occasion any further delay. This is because, as indicated by dint of Article 47, Clause 6, any constituency when created comes into effect only upon the next resolution of Parliament. So Article 47, especially, is in these terms, just for the avoidance of doubt. Where the boundaries, Article 47, Clause 6, where the boundaries of a constituency established under this article are altered as a result of a review, the alterations shall come into effect upon the next resolution of Parliament. It implies that even if the CI is laid before this Honourable House today, and same comes into force after 21 sitting days of Parliament, the Guam constituency can only come into effect after 6 January 2025, and elections can be held for the Guam constituency only on 7 December 2024. And Mr. Speaker, I think it is also important to note that, yes, if there is an immediate need for a recognition of the rights of the Guam, of the SAR areas to elect their member of Parliament, I think the solution would just be simple, just to annul the election of the member of Parliament for Guam constituency. And when that is done, we can hold fresh elections. So the solution is not just an annulment or a revocation of the LI. It must be coupled with an annulment of the Guam election or Guam parliamentary election. Thank you very much.
Yes. Speaker, if that is the solution to the problem, that is very much welcome so, and therefore the district, the district that the government he advised created will have to be annulled because a lot of things were not done in good time. The minister, like he narrated in his answer, that the CI that created Otirigi, CI 112, came into force in 2019. So government was very much aware that the SAL areas have been taken off from Hohwe and have been added region. So the necessary preparation and promises for a creation of a district should have started immediately. The learned Attorney General will agree that the long delay by government in acting same is what has resulted in all these problems. I'll ask my question. I want to find out from the minister. He said no delay has been occasioned because a creation of the constituency will come into force only after the 2024 elections, and that means 7th January 2025. But still, the people are agitating, and that explains why the Electoral Commission have had to engage them earlier. I want to find out from you, how many more days or man hours or manpower does the Attorney General need to conclude on the draft CI before him, so the commission together can forward it to this House?
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I respectfully have to correct the point made by my good friend, Mr. Kofi Adams. The CI did not come into force in 2019. CI 128 came into force in August 2020. The specific date is the 11th August 2020. That is when CI 128 came into force. Secondly, the Speaker, it cannot be entirely correct that, yes, the Speaker, so consequent on that, CI 128 was enacted to give effect to the creation of voting region and to place certain constituencies hitherto in the voter region under constituencies in the voting region. The Speaker, as I indicated, it cannot be entirely correct that it is the government which is responsible for the situation that the South people find themselves in. I would with all respect say that it is this Honorable House. It is this Honorable House because the CI was laid before the LI 2416 was laid before this Honorable House. This Honorable House watched for it to pass, and indeed this Honorable House had the power under Article 11 Clause 7 of the Constitution to annul the CI, the LI, if they don't want it to come to force. So this Honorable House participated in the creation of the Guan district. Article 11 Clause 7, particularly paragraph C, is quite instructive. It says, any other rule or regulation made by a person or authority under a power conferred by this Constitution or any other law shall C, come into force at the expiration of 21 sitting days, after being so late unless Parliament before the expiration of the 21 sitting days annuls the order, rule or regulation by the vote of no less than 2/3 of all the members of Parliament. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm not aware of any efforts made by Parliament to annul LI 2416, which created the Guan district. This House watched for LI 2416 to pass, and I think that the House must, with all respect and in all humility, bear full responsibility for the creation of the Guan district. If the House had revoked the instruments which created the Guan district, we would not have found ourselves in this situation. I believe I've answered your question.
Very well. Yeah. No, you are done. Here's a few more questions you want to ask.
Speaker, thank you. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Speaker, with all due respect, it cannot be correct. With all due respect to the Attorney General, it cannot be correct that in the contemplation of the framers of the Constitution as contained in Article 47, Clause 6, which is to the effect that where the boundaries of a constituency established under this article are altered as a result of a review, the alteration shall come into effect upon the next dissolution of Parliament. To reason that the scenario
Let me ask
created...
a question. You have the whole world outside to make your argument. Now ask him a question.
Yes,
please.
yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm laying a foundation to ask my question.
You're giving a foundation. Kindly ask the
Yes,
question now.
he's spoken a lot. He's spoken a lot. Yes.
Kindly ask the question.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I will ask the question.
Please, I'm waiting.
It cannot be correct that in the contemplation of the framers of the Constitution, the scenario in SAR. No, let me make my point. He insists here and says that we should annul an election. Is he a court? That the situation is
I will take away the opportunity if you don't answer the question.
Mr. Speaker, I am guided to say that the scenario at SAR or within SAR falls within the meaning in 47(6), because anytime the boundaries of a constituency are varied, the persons affected would have fallen into an existing constituency and would have participated in the forthcoming election. The persons in SAR who have been denied didn't fall within any constituency. So how do I apply 47(6) to their situation and advise the Electoral Commission accordingly? That's my question.
Honorable, yes.
Mr. Speaker, with respect, Article 47 is the only provision or the only article in the Constitution governing the creation and alteration of the boundaries of a constituency. My good friend has not pointed me to any provision at all which supports the proposition that he seeks to make, that if the Guam constituency comes, or if the CI creating the Guam constituency comes into force, then the Guam member of parliament elected can take his seat in this honorable house today. Mr. Speaker, there is no authority at all for that proposition. And indeed, the point is that whenever the boundaries of any constituency are altered, it comes into force in accordance with Article 47, Clause 6, upon the next resolution of Parliament. I still maintain that view. If my learned friend is opposed to the view, I believe that the Supreme Court, with all respect, is there, and we can seek interpretation.
Yes, leader.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask the Honorable Attorney General and Minister for Justice. Mr. Speaker, if I listen carefully, he said, even if the constituency is created constitutionally, they will only take part, it will come to force after the 2024 elections. Mr. Speaker, we are not asking of only representation, we are asking for rights and entitlement as well. And Mr. Speaker, you and I know the people of SAR, Lolobi, and Lipe do not currently belong to any constituency in the country. And because of that, they have no right to the MP share of the District Assembly Common Fund. Mr. Speaker, they have no right to the MP share of the National Health Insurance Fund. Mr. Speaker, they have no right to the MP share of the Ghana Educational Trust Fund. And Mr. Speaker, fourthly, they have no right to the MP share of the social intervention. Mr. Speaker, the question is, my constituency benefit, the Honorable Abi, your constituency benefit. Mr. Speaker, how will the people of SAR, Lolobi, and Lipe benefit from this, their constitutional right, which all the 275 constituencies are benefiting from? How will they benefit from this before 2025?
Honorable Attorney General, are you keen on answering this question?
Mr. Speaker, with all respect, I will attempt. Mr. Speaker, the point is that, as I indicated, CI 128, used for the conduct of the 2020 elections, has duly placed the SAR areas within the Guam constituency. Mr. Speaker, even on account of the constitutional anomaly, whose creation, as a result of this honorable house approving the passage of LI 2416, the SAR areas cannot vote. I clearly consider it to be a huge infraction on the part of a huge infraction that has been handed down to people. Mr. Speaker, I take the view, and indeed I have expressed this view on numerous occasions. I expressed it in the case identificating the Supreme Court in involving an honorable member of this House, Mr. Amewu, that indeed the way to go as a team is to annul the Boem election. Unfortunately, there is pending in the High Court a suit challenging the vital election of Mr. Kofi Adams. And that suit will clearly determine whether the position that I hold, that the Boem election should be annulled, is correct or not. And I think that we should actually ensure that the High Court speedily determines that suit, so that the SAL areas can exercise their franchise to elect a member of parliament who I think should be the member of parliament for Boem. Whether it's Mr. Kofi Adams at the next election or not, I'm not sure of. Thank you very much.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in an earlier answer to your question, the minister alluded to the fact that just around November 9th, there was an instrument that was ready to be laid by the Electoral Commission in this House to enable this new constituency to be created. But unfortunately, because of Parliament recess, that couldn't be done. What has prevented this same instrument from being laid all this while up to now 2022?
Yes.
Speaker, the answer is contained in my original answer, that when Parliament resumed sitting on 14 December 2020, there was still a lack of 21 sitting days before the next dissolution of Parliament, which occurred on 6th January, midnight of 6th January 2020. Midnight of 6th January 2021, I'm sorry. So, Mr. Speaker, if the honourable member will reckon from 14 December up to 6th January 2021, there wasn't 21 sitting days, and that's why the instrument could not be laid. And I've indicated that as the instrument is ready, even if it is laid before the House, it can only come into force, the case of the constitution can only come into effect upon the next dissolution of Parliament. And I think that the easier way is for the Boem election to be annulled, and then we can organize another election to include the south areas. Thank you very much.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, the minister is very much aware from his own answer that he has provided that because of the correspondence between his office and the Attorney General's office and the front and back, that delayed the possible laying of the instrument. Now he's talking about January 2021. To date, we have gone more than 14 months, and yet the instrument has still not been laid. Will he take blame for not placing the instrument before the House? For at least one of the challenges that confront SAL to be overcome, instead of still leaving it hanging without even an instrument creating the constituency.
The Speaker, I think that the honourable member, with all respect, did not pay due attention to the statement that I read. And it is indicate clearly that if you look at the material dates, at all the times that the Attorney General was involved in the draft of the CI, Parliament was not even sitting at all. Indeed, the letter to the Office of Attorney General reached our office on 13 November 2020. By that date, Parliament was not in session. And then the Office of Attorney General replied promptly and presented its first draft, another letter in November 2020. Parliament was still not in session. Then EC got back to the Office of Attorney General again on 26 November 2020. Parliament was still not in session. So by the time Parliament resumed, that's 14th December 2020, the draft constitutional instrument was ready. And it could not be late, as I indicated, because between 14 December and 6 January, 2021, 21 sitting days could not be achieved. It's as simple as that. I am saying that, no, the Electoral Commission conducted stakeholder engagement before and then presented a draft to us. We have also worked on a draft and sent it to them. And I make the point that even if the constitutional instrument is laid before the House, it comes into force only upon next session of Parliament.
Honourable Minister, is the draft with you or with the Electoral Commission?
The Speaker, it is back to the Electoral Commission.
Yes.
The Speaker, there's also another impression the minister is creating. The Speaker, with the greatest respect, I was in this House when we created additional constituencies, and we needed to realign a number of constituencies to create the additional 45 constituencies. It didn't lead to the cancellation or annulment of any existing constituency, but those boundaries were redemarcated to take effect in the next election. Why is he creating the impression that the only way is to now annul Buem and probably redo the election of Buem, when it can be done concurrently whilst the MP is still here, like we've always done when we realign our constituencies from 230 to 275. Each time we did that, we had to annul the existing constituency boundaries to create new ones without necessarily closing or, getting the MPs re-elected. Why is he creating the impression now that the only way to do the realignment is to call for another election in Buem?
Yes.
The Speaker, with all respect, the answer is quite simple. Because the two scenarios you created are different. Different in the sense that whenever this Honorable House gives effect to the enactment of a constitutional instrument to realign the boundaries of a region, all the areas within the newly created constituencies would already be represented. They would already be represented by a member of parliament of an existing constituency. In this situation, you find SAR not having been accorded the right to elect a member of parliament in any constituency at all. It is not in doubt that the member of parliament for Buem does not represent the SAR areas, even though the SAR areas have been placed under Buem. So the situations are different. And I made the point that indeed, the reason why we may have to annul the Buem constituency election is to ensure that the SAR areas are given the right of representation now. Apart from that, there's no law which actually places Buem within the constituency. It is only CI 128 which places SAR, it's only CI 128 which places SAR within the Buem constituency. There's no other law which places SAR within the constituency at all. So the way to go, if indeed we want to achieve representation of the SAR people in this parliament, or in the lifetime of this parliament, this 8th parliament, is to ensure that the proper areas that had been allocated, the proper constituency that they had been allocated, would have a proper election. And that proper election can only take place by including the SAR people in the parliamentary election, and with Buem election. With all respect.
Yes, the Speaker, the current instrument for Buem, I heard the minister says currently included the SAR, except that the electoral commission move ahead to say that they shouldn't vote in the parliamentary but vote in the presidential. So we are talking about the same thing, meaning that so far as we are concerned, the instrument is concerned, they are in Buem. It's only that electoral commission gave them an information that they shouldn't vote parliamentary, should only vote presidential. So how does it say that the situation of existing constituency being demarcated and this one are different? Because so far as we are concerned, the only law that we currently have as a country puts SAR in Buem, which has not been amended. So you cannot say that to redemarcate them out of Buem will require an alignment to annul the Buem constituency and go for whether a by-election or an election. Because it's similar. Because so far as the instrument we currently have is concerned, they are in Buem. Unless the ministers, I didn't hear your answer to a question earlier, right?
The Speaker, with all respect, and indeed he's right, he did not hear my answer very well. I had earlier stated clearly here that it will involve two steps. And the two steps is because now the SAR areas are within another district, Guan district. And therefore, no constituency, now they are not represented. Otherwise, Mr. Kofi Adams will not ask this question. Mr. Speaker, and the point is that if indeed there's just an annulment of the Buem election for the election to take place and for the member of parliament for Buem to represent the SAR areas, it will still create the constitutional anomaly of having a member of parliament to represent two districts at the same time. And I'm saying that within the terms of Article 242, paragraph B, it is an anomaly. And for that matter, there must be two steps. The first step will be to revoke LI 2416, creating the Guan district. Second step, the election of a member of parliament conducted in December 2020 for the Buem constituency, and for everybody, including the SAR areas, to participate in that election. Hallway is not, Hallway, SAR does not fall within Hallway at all. Hallway had electoral areas not including SAR, carved out clearly by CR 128. So the controversy about Hallway was non-existent at all, with all respect.
Yes.
Speaker, my very last question is to the Minister. When should this House expect the instrument to be laid to enable us jump at least the first leg of the problem?
Yes.
Yeah, the Electoral Commission, as I indicated, has the concerned instrument, and indeed will collaborate with them to ensure that it is duly brought before this Honourable House. But if the Honourable Minority Chief Whip is actually desirous of ensuring representation of the SAR people in this Parliament, then the solution is as simple as I indicated. Take the 2 steps, and it will culminate in an annulment of the election. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to find out from the Minister what is the best way for the good people of SAR to be represented in the 8th Parliament.
Leader, he has mentioned that on so many occasions. I think so. Thank you, Honourable Minister, for attending upon the House to answer the question. You're discharged. That brings us, when I come to leadership, I don't go back. That is not the practice. That is not the practice. Once you come to leadership, you don't go back. Please. Yes.
That brings us to the end of question time. Move to, with your leave, Mr. Speaker, if we can vary the order of business and jump item 7 and come to 8, presentation of papers on page 28. Yes, the Speaker has distracted me.
Item number 45.
Page 28, item number 45.
Wait. Presentation of papers. They are item 8. But where is the page 28?
Mr. Speaker, at the commencement of public business, 8, presentation of papers,
Yes.
page 28, item 45, motion.
Yes, the Honourable Minister has been discharged from answering questions. So you may, Honourable Attorney General, you may leave that seat and come back. Yes, Honourable Deputy Leader, Deputy Whip, I'm awaiting your guidance. Are you referring to item 45, motion? So we are not dealing with presentation of papers. Yes, Honourable Minority Chief Whip is applying that we move to item 45. Move a motion. Are you?
Mr. Speaker, we are ready.
Very well. Item 45. Motion by the Attorney General.
Speaker, thank you very much. We can beg to move that this Honourable House reads for a second time the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Amendment Bill. The Speaker, Honourable Members, the purpose of the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Amendment Bill 2021 is to amend the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Act 1960 at 30 to provide for plea bargaining in the administration of criminal justice. Plea bargaining is one of the evolving best practices in national and international criminal justice systems. Plea bargaining is a process in the criminal justice system where an accused person relinquishes the right to go to full trial in exchange for some other benefit. Such benefits may include a reduction of the offense charge to a lesser offense or withdrawal of the sum of the charges against the accused person. While plea bargaining may result in withdrawal of charges entirely in exchange for a promise to assist in the prosecution of others, most plea bargaining proceedings end in a conviction either for one or more of the offences charged, or for a lesser offence for which the accused could have been convicted at the trial. Some form of plea bargaining already exists in our criminal jurisprudence. Subsections 2 and 3 of Section 239 of Act 30, for example, provide for some limited plea bargaining in respect of indictable offences. Section 35 of the Courts Act 1993 at 459 provides for plea bargaining in respect of offences which result in economic loss, harm, or damage to the state or an agency of the state. Mr. Speaker, the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Act 1960 at 30, which came into force in 1961, has been in existence for 6 decades. As society changes and criminal jurisprudence evolves, there is a need to amend Act 30 to meet the demands of the society and to bring it in tune with international best practices. The benefits of plea bargaining include a reduction in the caseload of the courts and prosecutors, saving the state time and money by avoiding long and protracted trials, the congestion of the prisons due to reduced sentencing, aiding the reform of accused persons, and the satisfaction of victims of offences through compensation and restitution in addition to the punishment of the accused. The object of the bill to amend the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Act 1960 at 30 to specifically recognize plea bargaining to be applicable to all offences except the offences of treason and high treason. The bill also excludes from plea bargaining the offences of rape, defilement, genocide, robbery, kidnapping, murder, attempted murder, abduction, piracy, hijacking, and an offence related to public relations. The exclusion of treason and high treason from plea bargaining is in consonance with Clause 3 of Article 140 of the 1992 Constitution, which prevents the court from convicting a person being tried for treason or high treason for any offence other than treason or high treason. In respect of all other cases, the discretion is given to a prosecutor and the supervision of the Attorney General to decide whether, having regard to the circumstances of the case, it is just and fair to plea bargain. The court is also given the power to supervise plea bargain agreements by rejecting agreements that do not meet the ends of justice. In this way, prosecutors and judges are able to consider each case on its own merit. Mr. Speaker, in order to prevent abuse of the plea bargaining process, the Attorney General is empowered under the bill to authorize a prosecutor or class of prosecutors to conduct plea bargaining. Further, a prosecutor who is not an officer of the Office of the Attorney General is not to conclude plea bargaining agreements without the consent of the Attorney General. These administrative checks and balances are meant to safeguard against abuses. Another check against the abuse of the plea bargaining process under the bill is a requirement that the prosecutor explains the processes and the rights of the accused person to the accused person at the commencement of the plea negotiations, as most accused persons are usually not represented by counsel. To ensure that accused persons make an informed decision in plea bargaining in accordance with the decision of the Supreme Court in the case of Republic versus Eugene Bafuboni and others, unreported, dated 7 June 2018. The bill requires prosecutors to make disclosures before plea agreements are concluded. The Speaker, under the bill, either party may withdraw from the agreement at any time before the agreement is accepted by the court, and the accused person may further withdraw even after the acceptance but before sentencing. Since a judgment arising from a plea agreement constitutes a compromise judgment, the bill restricts the right of appeal against such judgment. However, a judgment arising from a plea agreement may be set aside on grounds of fraud, misrepresentation, or breach of the rules of natural justice. Process and ensure that the parties negotiate frankly and fairly. The bill prevents a prosecutor from using statements made by the accused in plea bargaining agreement for any other purpose. However, the plea agreement may be used when applying to set aside the judgment or when trying the accused person for perjury if the accused person commits the offence of perjury in the process of plea bargaining. Finally, the bill empowers the Rules of Court Committee to make further procedure for plea bargaining in accordance with Clause 2 of Article 157 of the Constitution. The Attorney General is also empowered under the bill to issue guidelines for the administration of plea bargaining, especially for the guidance of prosecutors. Mr. Speaker, honourable members of the House, It is my expectation that the House will assist in attaining the objectives of the bill by facilitating its passage. Thank you very much.
Yes, Chairman of the committee.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I rise to support the motion ably moved by the learned Attorney General. And in doing so, Mr. Speaker, I present, Mr. Speaker, your report of the committee to the House. Mr. Speaker, because the learned Attorney General had already canvassed on the principles of the bill, I would touch on few parts of the report and then conclude on the report. And I pray that the Hansard Department would capture the report in its entirety. Mr. Speaker, our observations as a committee are not different from what the learned Attorney General had already told the House. We were convinced during the consideration stage that the bill, if passed into law, would actually decongest our prisons and will give confidence also to people that are to go through prosecutions and whatnots. It came out that through this, we may even get people who would actually agree with the prosecution to actually unravel a lot of criminal offenses, especially organized crime. Mr. Speaker, the only thing that these are few clauses from A to Q, but on Q, the committee had, there were a lot of thoughts, whereas some thought that the exceptions had already been stated by the learned Attorney General and includes treason, high treason, robbery, defilement, genocide, kidnapping, murder, attempted murder, abduction, piracy, hijacking, and offenses relating to public elections. Some of the committee members thought that if we are doing a bill and doing an act that will cover, which is actually promoting plea bargain, it must be on all offenses. So that if it is murder, we must actually do plea bargain, especially because the parties, inclusive of the Attorney General, in the bill it is stated that unless the Attorney General gives a consent, nobody could actually agree on a plea bargain. And then the accused person would be involved. And then we would also have to draw the judges. The judge has the right to say that I am objecting on this ground that you have gone contrary to the law. So some members were of the view that it must be on all criminal cases. Others also were of the view.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, with the greatest respect, our rules are very clear. The chair is to present the committee's report. He's discussing the report. Yours is to present the report. You can pick sections to read, because you are presenting the committee's report. But you are now virtually debating the committee's report. So it's very difficult to follow. So we'll be grateful if he presents the report. After the debate and he wants to come with some additional comment, he can always be obliged by the Speaker to do that. But currently, he's not presenting the report, he's discussing the report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I seek your leave to read part of the report, Mr. Speaker? What I'm saying now is
the content of the report, and I'll read from page 8, the last paragraph. Application of the plea bargaining. Clause 162K of the bill provides for offences which are exempted from plea bargaining, and it includes treason, high treason, rape, defilement, genocide, robbery, kidnapping, murder, attempted murder, abduction, piracy, hijacking, and offences related to public elections. The Attorney General explained that the exemptions are necessary to avoid the possibility of abuse of discretionary power by the Attorney General in the authorization of offences for plea bargaining. He argued that the Attorney General may exercise this discretionary power in a way which may not be in the interest of justice and the larger society. Some members of the committee were, however, of the view that with the exception of treason and high treason, which have constitutional barriers, reference to Article 3, and 19(2) of the Constitution, all offences should qualify for plea bargaining. Members argued that the Attorney General is already granted the power of nolle prosequi under Section 54 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act to discontinue any criminal case he deems fit. Besides, Clause 162B of the bill empowers the Attorney General as sole party to authorize all plea bargaining cases before commencement or conclusion of the plea bargaining agreement. In addition, Clause 162H of the bill provides another layer for the court to reject the plea agreement when the court finds that the plea agreement entered into has no factual basis. Further, the prosecutor is mandated under Clause 162E, 1V, and VI to take the interests of the community and interests of justice into consideration as part of the plea agreement process. Now, the conclusion, Speaker. The committee finds the bill as a crucial legislative measure towards the reformation agenda of Ghana's justice delivery system. The bill, when passed into law, has the potential to contribute immensely to the efforts of decongesting Ghana's prisons, reduce caseloads on the courts and prosecutors, and save the state time and other resources by avoiding long and protracted trials. The committee accordingly recommends to the House to adopt this report and pass the Criminal Offences Procedure Amendment Bill 2021 into law in accordance with Article 106 of the 1992 Constitution, subject to the amendments proposed by the committee attached as Appendix A. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Yes, Honourable Ranking Member.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to contribute to the second reading of the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Amendment Bill 2021, otherwise popularly referred to as the Plea Bargaining Bill. Mr. Speaker, the purpose of the bill under reference is to amend the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Act 1960, Act 30, to provide for plea bargaining. Mr. Speaker, the national and international criminal justice system have undergone several changes. Mr. Speaker, the national and international criminal justice system have undergone several changes after coming into force of Act 30 over 60 years ago. Mr. Speaker, law, they say, is a communicative action. Law is an instrument of social engineering. Law must be in aid of development. And law is very dynamic and must adjust to changes in society. Mr. Speaker, it is for this reason that the introduction of the plea bargaining fully into our criminal jurisprudence is very important. And I believe strongly, if the bill is passed into law, this country will derive a lot of benefit from the plea bargaining. Mr. Speaker, what then is a plea bargaining? Plea bargaining is a process in a criminal justice system where an accused person relinquishes his right to go through a protracted trial, to have the obligation placed squarely on the prosecution to be discharged up to a standard of beyond reasonable doubt, to plead guilty to the charge for some other benefits. Mr. Speaker, what then are the benefits of a plea bargaining to the accused person and to the victim of the crime? Mr. Speaker, a plea bargaining can lead to a reduction in the offense charge or a withdrawal of some offenses against the accused person. It can also lead to a reduction in the sentence supposed to be given to the accused person. It goes a long way to give some benefit to the victim of the crime by way of allowing compensation to be paid to victims of a crime. Mr. Speaker, a plea bargaining would reduce the workload of the courts in criminal matters as well as the workload on the prosecution. Because once the person has taken advantage of the plea bargaining and has pleaded guilty, if the plea bargaining is accepted by the court, there will virtually be no need to go through a protracted trial in establishing the guilt of the accused person beyond reasonable doubt. Mr. Speaker, in view of this advantage, a plea bargaining is practiced both in civil and common law jurisdictions. So Ghana being a common law jurisdiction, there is the need to also be up to the international standard in practicing a plea bargaining. Mr. Speaker, the provisions of the bill give some exceptions in clause 162Q of the bill. And Mr. Speaker, the exception given by the bill at the committee level generated a lot of debate. And I believe these debates will have to be taken into consideration in doing clause-by-clause consideration of the bill. The Speaker, the argument is that the plea bargaining can only be authorized by the Attorney General of the state. And constitutionally in Article 88, the Attorney General is vested with the power to prosecute all criminal cases on behalf of the Republic. And the Attorney General, in Section 54 of the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Act, has the power of nolle prosequi. And the power of nolle prosequi, if entered by the Attorney General, cannot be questioned. And there is no limit to the exercise of this power of nolle prosequi. Now, once the Attorney General is going to authorize the plea bargaining, why should we give exception and exempt certain offenses from the plea bargaining? We, however, agree to the fact that if the punishment for the offense charge is death, then it must not go through a plea bargaining. Because in those punishments, if the accused person pleads guilty to the charge, the court will definitely make sure the accused is defended by a lawyer, and it is taken through the procedure in establishing the guilt of the accused person, though the accused has pleaded guilty. That is already our jurisprudence. So if you exempt offenses, that the end result will end up in death punishment. We agree perfectly to that. But for other offenses, where we go through a summary trial, you cannot say that those offenses should be exempted from a plea bargaining.
Honorable Member, just a legal exercise. Are the consequences the same? Nolle prosequi and plea bargaining. If it's a nolle prosequi It's the Attorney General who is deciding that I'll not continue.
Yes.
He can still come back anytime.
Yes.
But if it's a plea bargain, then you are admitting that you're guilty.
Yes.
So are there no difference?
Mr. Speaker, that is why we are saying that just like the Attorney General having the discretion to enter a nollie prosequi, he has the discretion to authorize a plea bargaining or not to authorize the plea bargaining. So if it is an offense that the Attorney General deem it fit not to authorize the plea bargaining, is at the discretion of the Attorney General, just as the nollie prosequi, irrespective of the discretion lies in the Attorney General. And this bill is giving the discretion to the Attorney General. So the argument that a corrupt Attorney General will abuse the plea bargaining gives me much interest as how a lecture in metaphysics will give to a newborn baby. Because if the Attorney General can abuse the plea bargaining, then equally that corrupt Attorney General can also abuse the nollie prosequi power given under Section 54 of Criminal and Other Offences Act. Mr. Speaker, for this reason, we need to look at the exception critically and then determine whether the benefit associated with the plea bargaining for those offences they should be denied. Mr. Speaker, one of the reasons for the plea bargaining is that it allows the prosecution to get one of the accused persons to assist the prosecution in getting other offenders. So for an offense involving a lot of people, if for those offenses the prosecution cannot use one person through the plea bargaining process in order to get to the other offenders, then, Mr. Speaker, what are we doing? An offense for hijacking, for instance, it may involve a lot of people, and it's difficult establishing it against the accused person. But if the prosecution can be successful in grounding conviction for all those who are involved, using one of them through the plea bargaining process, we are achieving a significant gain rather than closing the door completely of the plea bargaining. Mr. Speaker, let's look at the offenses involving defilement. For instance, defilement may involve male and a female below the age of 15 years, for instance. So if there is no element of a plea bargaining, that is really a difficulty, because you have to subject those minors through a criminal process. Mr. Speaker, the plea bargaining itself is good, but the exceptions that are being provided by the law is not very good, subject to offenses that the punishment for those offenses will be death, where automatically, whether you feel guilty or not, you have to go through the plea bargaining. Mr. Speaker, one advantage of the plea bargaining is that the fact that you pleaded guilty and then you go through the plea bargaining process does not mean that you are even going to be punished below the minimum sentence prescribed by law. It's just a mitigating factor. Now, this law gives the judge the discretion to say that based on the terms of the plea bargaining agreement, the court is not accepting the plea bargaining agreement. So there are a lot of control measures on the plea bargaining. The judge is there, the Attorney General is also there. The victim of the crime may be consulted in the plea bargaining, the prosecution as well as the accused person. So we are not in favor of all the exceptions being created under the law. And I believe strongly when we come to the clause-by-clause consideration, we will revert to this particular argument and carry the House along in agreeing that for a lot of exceptions provided here, it is needless. Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I support the motion and I urge the House to adopt the committee's report and then pass the bill into law so that we can derive the benefit associated with it in line with the international practice.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, Honorable Abubakar South, yes.
Right, Honorable Speaker, I think a lot has been said about the amendment to our laws on criminality and punishment. And I wouldn't want to be monotonous in trying to say what has already been said. But I am very happy and elated for one simple reason, that the laws which have governed punishment and then sentencing and the rest of them, I mean, have been in our law books for a long time. 60 years down the line, what other jurisdictions have changed, we are about to change. And that is a very, very welcoming news. That half the time, even the victim of a crime would have been happier receiving some monetary reward than sentencing somebody in imprisonment, and then the state will find sufficient money to keep the man comfortable. So, to a reasonable extent, if you go the antiquated way, it's a waste of money. You didn't appease the victim. Nevertheless, a little money in the kitty is what we are going to use to feed the man in prison. So, other jurisdictions have improved upon their justice, criminal justice delivery system, and what the Attorney General is attempting to do is most welcome. Right, Honorable Speaker, if you pay regard to how long it takes to, first of all, prefer charges against an accused person, and then the necessity to find counsel for the accused person in serious offenses, who onus which is on the Attorney General to prove the case beyond reasonable doubt? I'm afraid a simple criminal case can journey 4 years. Attorney General is telling me that sentence, a criminal trial can take as long as 6 years before finality is brought to bear on the proceedings. But if some understanding is reached by way of plea bargaining, the benefit is that we unclog the courts. The congestion that we find in the courts and all manner of troubles will be solved when we go the way of plea bargaining. What is even more interesting, and Honorable Speaker, I want to stress this. I do not think sentencing somebody in imprisonment is the only remedy in reforming individuals. I don't believe so. It's even been said that the more you pack people, in custodial imprisonment, you harden them to a reasonable extent. So plea bargaining is also an avenue to decongest the prisons and let people go and see no more. The only thing which is a challenge for me are the exceptions. Honorable Speaker, the report is very clear, and I don't know those constitutional barriers, but if I may attempt to read page number 7 of the committee's report. It is often said that justice delayed is justice denied. Good. And that is a fact. Consequently, expanding the scope of application of plea bargaining to cover almost all offenses except the barriers, such as treason, high treason, and other offenses including murder, piracy, hijacking, is expected to go a long way in speeding up trial of cases, providing cheap but effective means of adjudication, reduction in backlog of cases in courts, facilitate the rehabilitation of offenders, and the decongestion in our prisons. Honorable Speaker, I think the exceptions are good for now. As a matter of fact, sometimes you introduce some innovations in the justice delivery system so that you prepare the minds of others that, look, somebody has just raped a lady, and through some funny arrangement, some people will say the person is now he's not going to go to prison, but he's out, and the lady is complicit. With time, people will come to appreciate that it should be so for all offenses as pertains to other jurisdictions. But when we go in that graduation, that sensitivity, I mean, people come and appreciate that it doesn't pay off to go the old ways. Honourable Speaker, this is a very important introduction in our jurisprudence, and I am very, very excited that we've come this far. It seems to me that the amendments are not many and overloaded, and we should be able to speed it up so that we take the benefit of plea bargaining, which is also an international best practice. I'm grateful to you, Honourable Speaker, for this opportunity.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the motion in respect of the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Amendment Bill, otherwise known as the Plea Bargaining Bill. Mr. Speaker, a lot has been said about the benefits of plea bargaining to the dispensation of criminal justice in our country. Mr. Speaker, some of the benefits highlighted include the reduction in caseloads at the courts and on prosecutors, thereby saving time and resources for the state. Mr. Speaker, plea bargaining, if its scope is enlarged, would also lead to the decongestion of our prisons due to the reduced and non-custodial sentencing regime that would accompany such a policy. But, Mr. Speaker, quite a number of observations were made at the committee's consideration of this bill, and the ranking member has touched on some of the critical issues and observations made. I'd like to, Mr. Speaker, highlight some of the issues already raised, but in doing so, I would introduce certain new dimensions. Mr. Speaker, I would like to refer you to paragraph the observations, paragraphs 6.4 of the committee's report, and 6.4 talks about the scope of plea bargaining envisaged under the bill. Mr. Speaker, what the committee observed was the attempt to exclude quite a number of offences from the scope of plea bargaining, apart from the constitutional barriers already introduced, such as treason and high treason. Now, the ranking member has already made a point that the Attorney General's response for justifying the exceptions was that he had fears that if the exceptions are not created, there's a likelihood that an Attorney General could abuse his discretionary power. Mr. Speaker, I find that problematic for an Attorney General to argue that when power is vested in him or her, that office could abuse the discretionary power vested in him. And the ranking member rightly made the point that if you look at Article 88 of our Constitution, the power to enter nolle prosequi is discretionary. It is vested in the Attorney General. The framers of the Constitution did not at any point contemplate that an Attorney General
the principal legal advisor to government would abuse his discretionary power or authority. But, Mr. Speaker, is that not the reason why the Constitution itself expressly provides for the parameters within which discretionary power in all forms would be exercised? So Article 296 is so clear that whenever discretionary power is vested in a public officer, the said officer must exercise the discretionary power in a very fair and candid manner. Article 296 also talks about the exercise of the power in a manner that is not capricious, whimsical, etc., etc. And so, Mr. Speaker, the parameters have already been provided for. Therefore, the fears entertained by the Attorney General that when we vest additional discretionary powers in him, just as the Constitution vests the power to enter nolle prosequi in him, he is likely to abuse that power, is untenable in the face of Article 296. Because the Attorney General swears an oath to uphold the Constitution and all the laws of the Republic, to which he or she would serve as the principal legal officer of our state. So, Mr. Speaker, if the intendment for introducing this bill was to enlarge the scope of plea bargaining, because plea bargaining is not new to our criminal jurisprudence, let us be bold and enlarge the scope properly to include all other offenses apart from those offenses exempted under the Constitution itself. Mr. Speaker, I also have a strong view that any attempt to exclude the offenses that have been provided for under the bill, such as rape, murder, defilement, piracy, genocide, etc., etc., would even be discriminatory. And Mr. Speaker, I say this against the backdrop of recent Supreme Court decisions relative to similar matters that came before it, Martin Bebu versus the Republic, in relation to bail under Section 96 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act. Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court was very clear prior to the ruling in Martin Bebu's decision.
Kindly hold on. Yes.
Oh, why?
Are you on the point of order?
Right, Speaker, I want to be guided. My colleague says that he has a strong feeling, and I was wondering whether in this house, sorry? Oh no, it's a strong feeling. Sorry. I wanted to find out from Right, Speaker, whether in this house we should be moved by feelings or our thinking.
Some people's feelings infuse their thinking.
Yeah.
Yes, Honorable Member, continue.
Mr. Speaker, I said view. My learned senior was probably not very attentive. He was listening to some whispers from the Attorney General's end. But Mr. Speaker, the point I was making was in relation to the recent Supreme Court decision in Martin Bebu versus the Attorney General, where exceptions created under Section 96 in respect of bail, and those exceptions, Mr. Speaker, included murder, rape, defilement, most of the offenses listed under this particular bill as exemptions, narcotics-related offenses, etc., as non-bailable offenses, was shot down by the Supreme Court. And so we need to be careful here not to enact provisions in an act which probably would not stand the constitutional test under Article 17 because they are discriminatory. We need to bear in mind
that under Article 19 there is the presumption of innocence. And so regardless of the magnitude of the offense charged, it may well be the case, Mr. Speaker, that the accused person is innocent after all. So this is just to support the arguments canvassed by the ranking member that yes, the bill is very good, it seeks to enlarge the scope of plea bargaining, but let us be courageous and extend it to include all offences apart from those already exempted under the Constitution itself. In any case, the Attorney General is the one who would be vested with the discretion to determine whether to enter into a plea bargaining agreement or not. Mr. Speaker, one other important observation the committee made, and I'd like to refer to the said observation, can be found in paragraph 6.3. And 6.3 talks about the potential injustice of plea agreements towards victims. Potential injustice of plea agreements towards victims. Mr. Speaker, the point here is that agreements are entered into by the prosecution and a defendant or an accused. And so you find that victims, as a matter of fact, are not parties to plea agreements, and yet they are the victims. So, taking cognizance of this fact, this bill sought to, in a way, rope victims in by ensuring that the prosecution shall seek the consent of victims, and that when victims are not satisfied, they may raise their objections in writing. But, Mr. Speaker, the problematic provision that caught the attention of the committee was in clause 162E3. And in 162E3 of the bill, there is the provision which says that where the prosecutor, after reasonable efforts, fails to reach or is unable to reach the victim, then the plea agreement could come into force or effect. Mr. Speaker, we are of the view that this particular provision is problematic. What is reasonable within the context of the bill? How can it be said that a prosecutor who, for all intents and purposes, may have the victim as his witness, key witness, material witness, would all of a sudden not be able to reach the said victim for purposes of striking a plea bargaining agreement? I mean, it is simply not conceivable in the circumstances. And so we thought that that area that needs to be resolved, we must take into full account the circumstances of victims. In my personal view, where a victim expresses dissatisfaction about a plea bargaining arrangement, the entire process should even fail. So if you create a leeway for a prosecutor to say, I have made reasonable efforts and cannot reach my victim to obtain the consent of the victim, we believe that that is problematic. And at the right time, when we are called upon to do the clause-by-clause consideration, we probably would introduce amendments to take away the power of the prosecution to make the determination that he or she made reasonable efforts but could not reach the victim. Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I urge the House to adopt the motion. Thank you.
Yes, honourable members, take note that I don't intend to go beyond 2 p.m. today. So we have to do it quickly so I can close. I have an appointment outside at 2:30. Unfortunately, Secretary Fiscal is also engaged in other official assignments. So by 2, o'clock, I'll bring proceedings to a close. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the debate on the amendment proposed on the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Bill. At 30, 1996. Mr. Speaker, your committee, the proposal being put before it, and also considering the changes in society and in our criminal justice system, alongside international best practices, a thorough discussion was held at the committee level, and also considering some existing legislations that had limited provisions for plea bargaining, especially in subsections 2 and 3 of Section 239 of Act 30, and also Section 35 of the Courts Act, Act 459. Mr. Speaker, other recent legislations, as in the Office of the Special Prosecutors Act, Act 595, and the Narcotics Control Commission Act, Act 1019, also make some provisions for plea bargaining. But in all of them, Mr. Speaker, the committee realized that there were some limited opportunities for the accused to perhaps decide on some charges or some sentences. So the committee, considering all the reports that were submitted to it through the Attorney General's Department and their consultants, some extensive work being done, and the international best practices reports presented to us, the committee considered that it was necessary as a state to accept aspects, most of the aspects of the bill as proposed by the Attorney General's Department. And earlier speakers have brought out some controversial areas that we feel that coming to the floor will give us the opportunity to perhaps do a little more discussion and consultation. And to also add that the Attorney General's Department did a broad consultation and did an extensive work by studying up to 11 jurisdictions. And considering the criminal justice systems of these jurisdictions, they have also inculcated into the reports some opinions from the best practices that were learned, and also the opinions of the public, the victims, and most especially the accused, because in most instances, they are the people at the center, and the victims also have, in considering the plea bargaining agreement. So, Mr. Speaker, the officialdom also introduced some opinions and some perspectives, and the overall effect is a high level of appreciation of the public, the Ghanaian public, and the stakeholders of plea bargaining. And it is my opinion and my suggestion that, Mr. Speaker, considering the benefits that accrue to the individuals, as in the accused and victims, and also to the state, as in saving the state of its resources, I think that it is a report the House should consider, and the bill should be passed into a law that will save the state of some resources that are spent on our inmates. Mr. Speaker, in other jurisdictions, such as in the US, some 97–98% of their cases are settled through plea bargaining, as per a report submitted to the committee. And I think that it is a way to reduce the congestions in our prisons, in a way to perhaps get some accused and victims come to a mutual agreement to have their issues sorted out, other than the usual thing that this country is known to have told. Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I urge the House to accept the report of the committee and to pass the bill into a law to guide our criminal justice system in this country. I thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, Honorable Member for Zebila.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, admittedly, many good laws have been passed by various parliaments, and they are in our statute books. Our challenge has been one of implementation. It is my prayer that when this law is passed at the end of the day, it will not suffer the same fate. Mr. Speaker, plea bargaining is not a new phenomenon in Ghana. In fact, as far back as 1973-76, when I was a law student in the law faculty in the University of Ghana, the issue of plea bargaining came to the fore. And that was when Dr. I.L. Ohenejan, a Sunyani-based legal practitioner, was charged with murder, that he had murdered or killed his house help. And during the course of the trial, the lawyers for the accused person decided to invoke the provisions on plea bargaining to plead guilty to manslaughter rather than to the murder that he was being tried. And that brought a lot of hullabaloo in the country. People did not understand why somebody is charged with murder and can, at the end of the day, stand trial for manslaughter, which is a lesser offense. So that is a major challenge of plea bargaining that we are going to witness in this country. Speaker, when we met at the committee, we had a good number of resource persons from the judiciary, from the U.S. Embassy, and then from other civil society organizations. And we did a lot of brainstorming. And then we were able to identify the good side of plea bargaining and the challenges associated with plea bargaining. It is instructive that this August House will take note of the challenges that we identified, so that at the end of the day, when we go to consider the clause-by-clause provisions, this will come to light so that we can make a good law. Mr. Speaker, whether we like it or not, the lawyers in the chamber here who have been in practice know that there have been plea bargaining at the police stations. Plea bargaining is a daily affair, whether albeit illegally or so, in the police stations. Somebody will be accused of even defilement and rape and whatnot, or even some other traffic offenses. And the police will advise him, if you go to court, plead guilty so that I'll talk to the magistrate to be lenient on you. If you go to court, plead guilty so that I'll talk to the magistrate, I'll talk to the judge. He will either fine you or caution you or let you go free. That is plea bargaining. And then he will take something from the accused person, and then that ends the matter. Even though at the end of the day he had no influence of the judge or the magistrate, he may not even tell him that he and the accused person had entered into a plea bargaining. So it is important that at this stage we legitimize the concept of plea bargaining in the statute books, so that it is no more a criminal, it's no more practiced by police stations and by people who are not authorized to do plea bargaining. It's very instructive that we do that. Against this background, I'm happy the Attorney General is here. We have challenged that militate against the implementation of this law. In the first place, many of the districts do not have courts. Many of the districts in the country do not have courts. Secondly, some regions do not even have high courts. Thirdly, some regions have very lean staff of Attorney General staff. Justice delayed is justice denied. So if the Attorney General is going to be responsible for undertaking this plea bargaining, and then at Zebila we write to the Attorney General in Bolga, and then it takes him 1 month, 2 months to write back and say that these are the terms of the plea bargaining. Have we benefited? Is it not justice delayed that we are already practicing today? There is an area that the Learned Attorney General may have to take note of. Creation of district courts, circuit courts, and regional high courts is very important for plea bargaining to be able to thrive. Otherwise, in the absence of that, it will go back to the same problem that we are having today: delayed trials and delay of justice. Mr. Speaker, you are right aware that, let's say, somebody is arrested for possessing just some small passing of Indian hemp or something we didn't know. Yes. Then they prepare a docket and send to AG department. 2 years, 3 years. Somebody's child was attempted murder or rape and whatnot. After docket goes to AG department, 1 year, 2 years before it comes back. What is there to guarantee that if we adopt this law of plea bargaining, there won't be delays coming from the AG department so that we will suffer the same fate that we did? The other challenge that we should take note of is that unless we embark on public education, unless we embark on sensitizing the generality of the Ghanaian public, at the end of the day, what many of them will perceive is that it is, as usual, middle-class people and high-class people who want to milk this country small. Like economic crimes, it is important that we actually do plea bargaining so that we get back the money. It's very useful. At the time, the masses on the streets will think that we are ganging up. It's a collusion between the middle class and then the high class to continue to cheat the society, to continue to cheat the populace. So I'm saying that while plea bargaining is very useful, it's very important, public education and sensitization is very important if we want this law to be able to be implemented effectively. Otherwise, it might be running away from Ayamba only to go and meet another Ayamba somewhere else. So I'm praying that we'll take note of these provisions, and when we come to the clause by clause, we'll know what to do. And besides that, if you look at clause 1.6, the exemption clause in the bill, 162QL or so, we deliberated on this for over 1 hour without any agreement. For 2 days indeed, without any agreement. Because if you have, I said that there's some of the social offenses, like rape, defilement, kidnapping, attempted murder, abduction, and then an offense related to public elections, should be part of plea bargaining and not be exempted. For example, in my ethnic group, in part of the North, abduction is a method or a mode of marriage. If I love a girl and we meet in the market or at the funeral house and whatnot, my young man will abduct her. They will just kidnap her and then put in the taxi or a donkey cart and then go home. That is kidnapping. That is abduction. But at the end of the day, after 2, 3, they will go and inform the parent that they shouldn't be looking at their daughter. He will pass, and it's marriage. And you are saying that we should exempt this and it should not be part of plea bargaining. That is plea bargaining in practical terms. We have been doing plea bargaining in marriage. And so we shouldn't pretend and sit here and adopt what is happening elsewhere without taking the values and then the practices of our traditional areas, of our groups in the country. How can abduction, how can I marry a woman and say that it's not subject to plea bargaining? That is wrong, Mr. Speaker. It's not against her will. Sometimes they are pretending. You know women. She will just she will just weep and pretend for 1 hour and then wash her face and then that ends it. That is not against her will. It's a form of marriage. And we are saying it should be exempted from plea bargaining. Why? It should be part of plea bargaining. We should legitimize it. It is against the backdrop of this that I think that this is a very useful bill, that we should be careful that unless we educate Ghana to understand the threshold in this bill, we must be passing a law which at the end of the day we might not be able to implement successfully. If we do, it will knock our heads, we those who are here, they think we are in a privileged class against the people who are on the streets, that as usual, we have come together to milk the country, to protect each other and to cheat the country. And when that happens, the law will be a disservice rather than a tool for social engineering. Thank you.
Honourable members, I will not put a question today. The debate will continue, but it's 2 p.m. and I intend to bring proceedings to a close as I announced earlier. So when we come tomorrow or the day after, the debate will continue before the question will be put. Right. Honourable members, unless the leaders have any announcement, I wish to bring the proceedings to a close for the day. Any announcement? Yes, Honourable Judge.
Mr. Speaker, there's no particular announcement. I was just asking the chairman of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee if the committee is ready to lead us in the consideration stage on Friday, even if we deal with the continuation tomorrow, and you put in the question on the second reading tomorrow. As we could at least begin the consideration on Friday.
Very well. I'll be guided by the committee's decisions. Yeah. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, if you don't mind, my attention has been drawn to item listed as 8. The AG perhaps could lay this document A, and then I could also do for B. I guess 2 minutes will be through that.
Which item?
Item 8 on the order paper, page 5.
A.
Page 5.
A and B. Very well. Presentation of papers.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I would seek the permission, your permission, and the indulgence of my colleagues to allow the Attorney General to present the paper on behalf of the Minister for Interior. That is 8A.
Very well. A. Honorable Attorney General.
Narcotics Control Commission Regulations 2022.
Honorable members, the paper I duly presented is referred to the Committee on Subsidiary Legislation to consider and report. B.
Report of the Bank of Ghana on the conduct of monetary policy, macroeconomics review, and banking sector development for the period January to December 2021.
The paper I duly presented is referred to the Committee on Finance to consider and report. Now, honorable members, the House is adjourned till Thursday, March 10th, 2022 at 10 o'clock in the forenoon.